Well, I don't know about you guys, but with the way things have been going here lately, with the sanctuary cities, the illegal immigrants, and now we just heard that a Colts football player and his Uber driver got killed because of an illegal immigrant that got drunk. Okay, something's got to be done here. And everybody's pushing away, pushing to keep these illegal immigrants floating around our neighborhoods and schools and parks and everywhere else. And then, I don't know, it just don't make no sense to me. But in this video that you guys are watching, that I'm piecing things together, you can come to your own conclusions. So, maybe you can make some heads or tails out of it. I feel sorry for the people that came here not on their own choice. I mean, as kids and babies and stuff like that. But, like I've heard before, they're in their 40s. They've had more than enough time to get established. Why they're not established like they need to be, and there's a lot of them that are established. But if they do something wrong and they're not legal, then what else can you do? You know, we need to back up the situation and get these people legal, as in send them back and then let them come back as legal. Other than that, all these other ones that's not legal, that's out doing stupid stuff, like Kate Steinle, the one that was deported 5 times and killed that girl just because he did. Now we hear this one about the football player that got ran over, okay, because he was drunk. Not the football player, but the one that killed the football player. And he was deported twice and let back out on the streets. Something ain't right there. Okay, so like I said, you guys draw your own conclusions and think about it, because until this thing gets right and people get right like they need to be, this is going to keep happening, and it's a damn shame, is all I got to say. So listen to this, and like I said, draw your own conclusions on what you think about it.
Include revoking federal funds from so-called sanctuary cities, which are said to protect undocumented immigrants. Bigger cities like Boston, Chicago, and New York are all at risk of losing billions of dollars in aid. Another city that could be affected is Los Angeles, and that's where we find our Carter Evans.
When it comes to taking on President Trump's immigration policy, California has drawn a line in the sand.
In California, immigrants are an integral part of who we are and what we become.
Governor Jerry Brown's message this week was blunt.
Let me be clear. We will defend everybody, every man, woman, and child who's come here for a better life and has contributed to the well-being of our state.
California has 18 sanctuary cities. Brian Abarca was born in Mexico and brought to the U.S. at age 3.
Are you worried that you might get pulled over for speeding one day, though, and end up getting detained?
Yes, that's everyday life.
He lives in Los Angeles, where Mayor Eric Garcetti has instructed police not to enforce immigration laws.
Even if it threatens federal funding in Los Angeles, you stand to get up to $500 million this year.
These are dollars that protect our port, our airport, keep homeless veterans off the streets.
You're saying pulling funding from LA could actually hurt the rest of the country?
No question.
There's anxiety, right, going around. There's a lot of worry.
Pedro Trujillo's parents, both undocumented immigrants, brought him to the U.S. when he was 7.
Are there going to be raids coming our way in the coming months? We don't know that yet.
But you're prepared to stand up and fight back?
Well, we have to be prepared because this is our only country, it's our only home.
Joining me now from Denver, Colorado, is Mayor Michael Hancock. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
What is your take on the directive signed by President Trump?
Very disappointing. Cities all over this country have been waiting for the federal government to pass or to come up with an immigration policy, a comprehensive immigration policy. But that's not what we got today. We got an executive order that was somewhat vague, commits this nation to building a wall along its southern border that commits billions of dollars, instead of investing in helping to strengthen our nation and investing in the economic framework of our nation and many of our cities, quite frankly. And, you know, it lacks vision, it lacks leadership, and I think it's a missed opportunity.
Well, in a statement, you said the executive orders signed today put our economic security as a nation at risk, and I am deeply disappointed. What kind of consequences do you think could come from this policy?
Well, one is it puts a lot of people in our cities in fear. And as mayors across this nation, we have been discussing this. Many of our residents recognize, and we certainly recognize, that one of our chief responsibilities is to protect our residents. And we've been spending the last few months really trying to encourage folks and reassure them that we're going to be okay and they're going to be okay. Tonight, the executive order really puts a lot of that in question, and a lot of the folks who we are working to protect every day are now in a great deal of fear and concern for their families, that they're going to be needlessly torn apart from their families. So we're going to have to work to reassure people that we'll make sure that we, while complying with federal immigration laws, will do everything necessary to protect the residents of our city, immigrant or not.
So, Mr. Mayor, is your city a sanctuary city?
The city of Denver is a city that is inclusive, open, and has always welcomed people to our city. We again have been hoping for an immigration policy, a comprehensive one, so that we can move forward with a path of engaging folks lawfully in our city, so they can be can reap the opportunities of this great nation as well. We've never passed a policy to be a sanctuary city, but we're an open and inclusive city, one in which we value greatly in our state of Colorado.
The executive order, as I understand it, allows the Department of Homeland Security to declare cities to be sanctuary cities, and it describes a sanctuary city as one that, by, quote, statute, policy, or practice, prevents or hinders the enforcement of federal law. Are you concerned that you could lose federal funding as a result of your city's policy?
Nothing in the executive order today, Elaine, in consultation with our city attorneys, we're not in violation of anything that was mentioned in the executive order today. We have always been cooperative with the federal government and the federal immigration statutes. We've complied with those laws. But we also have values in this city, and values of open inclusiveness, and quite frankly, values that say that we don't needlessly tear families apart. We would rather have a plan going forward that all of us in this nation are following. Mayors all this country have been asking for a plan, and we've asked the federal government to give us a comprehensive immigration strategy so that we can incorporate the hopes and dreams of the immigrants who are in our city. And that's what's important to us, and those are the values that we believe are not only inherent in Denver, but our American values.
But you're not concerned, though, that you might be found to be in violation and therefore subject to losing federal funds?
We don't believe we're in violation of any of the federal laws and not of this executive order as it is written today.
So what is the plan in the meantime right now for you and your city?
Right now, it's very important for us to reassure all of our residents that we'll do everything we can to keep them safe. We will continue to comply with the federal laws, but more importantly, continue to push the president, his administration, and Congress to come up with a comprehensive immigration strategy. Quite frankly, that's leadership. And that's what the American people should hope and expect for, and that's what keeps our economic opportunities of this nation intact. And quite frankly, is more practical than trying to place fear and hopelessness in 11 million people who happen to be in our nation.
All right, Denver Mayor Michael Hancock. Mr. Mayor, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that's what he had to say. And like I said, all these sanctuary cities are holding these people is going out doing stupid stuff and not deporting them. And it's going to come to a stop one way or another. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost money to build the wall. And we've been giving these towns and cities and states and counties and countries money after money after money after money. And like Trump says, they ain't helping themselves and they sure the hell ain't helping us. So, yes, it's time to put a stop to the situation and fix it. And that's just what he's doing. So we'll go from there and see what happens. You know, I'd hate to say I feel sorry for them, but, you know, it is what it is, and it's nobody's fault but their own. Their parents, you know, they come over here illegal, they ain't legal yet. You know, yeah, it might cost money, but one I heard earlier today, been working 40 years at a place. What's he been doing with his money? You know, if it costs so much money to get legal, you know, that would be the first thing I did was to get legal. You know, I don't know. It's just my take on things, you know. So anyway, we'll just move on and go from there. Here's one you ought to take heed to. Check this out. Tell me if this is right. See what you think on this one.
Illegal immigration into Canada is now officially out of control. Take a look at this. Montreal's Olympic Stadium is being used to house thousands of illegals. Did you know this was happening? These are people that just wandered into our country. We have no clue who they are, and our government doesn't even care. Oh sure, help yourself to our government programs, have some free healthcare. How about social security checks?
Yeah.
Why not, right? Voters don't get a say. People who have worked hard to earn their way into Canada don't get a say. Only the voices of government elites are being heard. Remember this tweet sent out by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last January? Quote, "To those fleeing persecution, terror, and war, Canadians will welcome you regardless of your faith.
Exactly.
Diversity is our strength. Hashtag welcome to Canada." End quote. The PM sent it out as a smug rebuttal to the announcement of President Trump's 6-month travel ban on 7 Muslim-majority countries known for rampant terrorism. And it looks like the PM's virtue signaling has worked a little too well. Asylum seeker numbers to Canada are now spiking, with Quebec seeing the biggest increase. Just in case you're unfamiliar with the terminology, here's a brief explanation. An asylum seeker means a person who has claimed asylum under the 1951 United Nations Convention on the Status of Refugees, on the ground that if he is returned to his country of origin, he has a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, political belief, or membership of a particular social group. He remains an asylum seeker for so long as his application or an appeal against refusal of his application is pending. A refugee, as the word is used in the convention, means an asylum seeker whose application or subsequent appeal against initial refusal has been successful. Economic migrant means a person who has left his country and seeks by lawful or unlawful means to make a living for himself in another country. Many asylum seekers are in fact economic migrants who hope to secure entry by claiming asylum. Illegal immigrant means someone who lives or works in another country when they do not have the legal right to do this, so essentially another word for economic migrant. Now back to our story. Quebec's immigration minister, Kathleen Wheels, says on average 50 asylum claims are made a day, and in recent weeks it has increased to 150 per day. Most of the illegals entering are currently from Haiti, which is odd since Haiti isn't a war zone and they would not fit under any of the refugee criteria. In the first 6 months of 2017, 6,500 asylum seekers arrived in Quebec, 35% of all the asylum seekers who arrived in Canada. CBC News reported during a single 24-hour period from Tuesday into Wednesday, close to 300 asylum seekers crossed the border at Roxham Road. Roxham Road has become the epicenter of migrant crossings from the US into Canada. Let's be clear, as Canadians have big hearts, We all want to help those struggling, but at what point do you go from being generous to being doormats? Now we're learning that a stream of cabs, buses, and vans drop off illegals every day at the end of the road. Then they're greeted by RCMP officers who promptly arrest them. But it's believed that this is all part of the plan. The migrants want to get arrested. This way, they can get into the Canadian immigration system and out of the American one. It's almost like some of them are gaming the system. The Roxham Road location has been made into a 24/7 processing center with a carved out footpath, porta potties on site, tents to protect people from the sun, generators powering fans during the day and lights at night, and a metal fence queuing system. Of course, all of this is taxpayer funded.
Exactly.
Being arrested on Canadian soil means that the government now has to let them do a refugee claim. They're usually taken to immigration offices at the nearest legal border crossing where they can officially ask for asylum. If they have ID and don't appear to pose a security threat, they are released and given a bus ticket to Montreal, where they wait for a hearing on their refugee status. Because there are so many in this position and resources are strained, the Olympic Stadium is now housing them. Keep in mind, authorities in Greece turned the old Olympic volleyball stadium into a temporary housing refuge for migrants. Yet a year and a half later, the migrants are still there and taxpayers, well, they're still paying.
Oh, there you go.
In Montreal, the government is now providing health care to the asylum seekers. They also admit they cannot predict whether the number of asylum seekers will stabilize, increase, or diminish. Earlier this year, Montreal voted to become a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. The motion includes provisions to ensure undocumented people can obtain services without fear of deportation. What if some of these people committed crimes in their native country, but didn't provide any ID to Canadian officials, so we can't look into their backgrounds? Great question, right? The answer is who knows, because when it comes to border policy, we're just winging it. Montreal's mayor seems to be proud of the fact the city encourages illegal immigration funded by taxpayers. Here's his tweet to Donald Trump. Message to Donald Trump. Montreal proud, sanctuary city, newcomers and refugees are welcome. Diversity is our strength and part of our DNA. Quebec, by the way, receives the lion's share of the country's equalization payments, around $300 billion since 1957 when the program began. They have never been a net contributor to the fund either. So essentially, the rest of Canada must pay for Montreal's insane illegal immigration policies and housing of asylum seekers. In light of this information, I have a few questions. If you could vote on this one issue, would you want this to continue as it is?
Nope.
Also, who's coordinating the effort to bring these people to this obscure border crossing? Who has told them about the complicated refugee process? Who is arranging the bus drop-offs and supplying the transportation? There's clearly a transaction of money. The migrants aren't getting on buses for free. Is the government following the money trail?
Yep.
The drivers could be complicit in human trafficking, which is an illegal offense. Why aren't they being arrested? Are there any journalists actually doing their jobs by investigating this apparent smuggling operation? And what is the government's plan to end this? The cost to taxpayers must be extraordinary. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing.
Well, there you go. And if that don't ring a bell, think about all your taxpayers' money. Okay? And all these jails and prisons are loaded to the hilt. We got rid of most of these people that don't belong here. Our tax money would go back into America for ourselves, instead of shipping all this money, billions and millions and billions and millions of dollars, to other people, to other places, when they're not doing nothing for themselves and nothing for us. So think about it. Would you rather keep your tax money to help the economy, or would you rather spend it for something that's not helping themselves? You see what I'm saying there? This is the very thing I'm talking about. Listen to this. And tell me if you don't agree with me here. Listen, real close.
We're going to have to come together and choose a vision of America where everybody gets a fair shot and everybody does their fair share and everybody plays by the same set of rules.
The same set of rules. But by everybody, does he mean American citizens? Especially those who are in the country illegally. A new report shows that illegal aliens may be getting a better deal than you think. In fact, a better deal than you're getting. Joining me now is public policy analyst Jason Richwine. Jason, these numbers are almost unbelievable. I'm assuming they're true. They're shocking. I want to put up on the screen the amount in welfare that the average illegal immigrant gets every year. $5,692 versus American families, $4,431. What kind of country gives more benefits to illegal aliens than to its own citizens?
Well, you know, Tucker, it's all immigrant households, not just illegal. It's legal and illegal. They both receive a very large amount of welfare. In fact, actually about half of all immigrant households receive some form of welfare. And you see the numbers on the screen there, so it's quite large. To me, the biggest takeaway from this is that there is something fundamentally wrong with your immigration system when immigrants are receiving more welfare than natives.
Okay, so anybody who complains about this is derided immediately by the left as a racist, a nativist, as a bad person, attacked morally. But is there another country in the world that does this, that says, come in, break our laws, and we'll reward you, we'll give you more than we give our own people?
No, not at all. And in fact, I actually think that this is the kind of thing we need to pay attention to precisely because the president talked about coming together as a nation. I agree, absolutely, we should come together. And one way to do that is to help low-skilled natives recover from the many problems they face right now. The worst possible way to do that is to bring in more cheap labor to compete with people who already have so many problems they're facing.
Right.
I would say let's reduce some immigration, get it down to more modest levels, and we can, I think, help unify a nation.
Or at least have a public debate about it, which as of right now is not allowed at all, as you know. So the basic justification for the record high immigration levels we have now, 3 million people in the last 2 years, is that our economy needs it. They're the engine of the economy. It's a net plus to America economically, but these numbers suggest the opposite.
Immigration certainly raises GDP, but almost all of that money goes to the immigrants themselves. There's really only a small sliver that ends up going to natives, and in exchange for that sliver, there's a very large redistribution of money from labor to capital. And of course, that doesn't even begin to talk about the fiscal costs of the welfare numbers you see that were on the screen. So yes, absolutely, there are some major costs here, and we should be talking about them. And, you know, I would credit, you know, someone like the Trump campaign for bringing up some of these issues. You know, I appreciate that, and, you know, whether you like him or hate him, I mean, at least we're now having a good debate about all this.
And it raises a pretty deep question about the purpose of government. Does government exist to serve its own citizens or to alleviate global poverty?
That is a sort of a philosophical question. I think most Americans agree that immigration policy should be designed to benefit the native people, to benefit America itself. And as I said, if that is the case, and I think it should be, no one would sit down from scratch and write an immigration policy. They say, you know what, let's have immigrants receiving more welfare than natives. That's a very strong indication that we're not optimizing the system.
Yeah, and anyone who points it out is attacked. Jason, great to see you this morning. Thanks for coming on with that.
Thank you.
We're going to have to...
So now, with that being said, this is what it's going to take to drain the swamp for his campaign that he ran on and he got elected on. And this is why he's president. Okay? So you really need to listen on this one.
We all know what President Trump wants to do with that swamp thing.
We are going to drain the swamp of government corruption in Washington, D.C. And we are going to keep our promises, all of the promises that we made.
But here's the question. Is the swamp too deep to drain? Our next guest doesn't think so. Here with his strategy is Fox News contributor and the host of the new show, The Next Revolution, with Steve Hilton. Mr. Steve Hilton. By the way, Steve is also the former director of strategy for Prime Minister David Cameron. Wanted to work that in. Of course, out on the campaign, then candidate Donald Trump started talking about drain the swamp. I think initially he thought it was kind of a corny expression, but it really has resonated with me.
Yeah, he didn't really love the phrase, but the idea, which is Washington, D.C. isn't working.
Right.
It's all controlled by lobbyists and donors and officials who've been there forever. And that's why change isn't happening. That's what drain the swamp, the idea meant. And once people heard the phrase, they really understood the kind of changes that the president wanted to bring.
Okay, so let's talk about how to drain the swamp. First step, Washington, D.C. By the way, when people refer to the swamp, back in the old days, the National Mall where they built that was actually a swamp, and so that's where the expression comes from.
So, Steve, the first thing that we got to think about is something actually that President Trump has already started to deal with, which is the lobbyists.
Okay.
Here are the lobbyists. They are concentrated in this area. There's a street called K Street.
Yeah.
And around that area,
through the middle.
Through there, that's where they all live and work and hang out and do their deals, all the things that people think of when they think about the swamp. The lobbyists at the heart of it. Now, the president's already announced executive orders to clamp down on lobbying. That's good news, but it's just the start, because actually the swamp is much bigger than just lobbying. You've got the federal bureaucracy.
Sure.
So a lot of those big federal agencies, they're based there along Pennsylvania Avenue between the Capitol and the White House.
Federal triangle right there.
Exactly. And the thing is that the next steps, you see, from draining the swamp, after he's dealt with the lobbyists, let's just get rid of that. Can you
push that X one more time? All right. All right.
There we are. All right. The next steps.
There we go.
Very good.
Technology.
There we go. So the next step's out. The next step, after dealing with the lobbyists, is the federal bureaucracy itself. These are the people, the officials, who've been in their positions for year after year after year. They've got their own agenda. And actually, if you want to really bring change, he's got to change those agencies. That's not enough to just say, do this, not that.
Right.
In my experience, having worked in government, trying to do this kind of thing, the only way to deal with it is you just have to get rid of those people.
Well, the problem
is to fire them. And that is not easy, because there's lots of rules, there's the unions, there's all sorts of things that they need to get over. And then the final thing, in terms of draining the swamp, the next step is here, is actually thinking about what goes on in Congress. The fact that so many of the decisions there are really controlled by the donors, the big donors that Trump spoke about in the campaign. Do you remember he talked about how they're puppets of the donors?
Sure.
He's got to do something about that too.
Tell Congress to ignore the donors. The donors are where they get the money, and members of Congress run for re-election every 2 years. They need the donors.
They do, but honestly, the president is not going to succeed in draining the swamp unless he does something about the way that big money controls politics. It's a really tough battle, but they're the three steps. Lobbyists, getting rid of the bureaucrats, doing something about the donors in Congress. That's draining the swamp.
Look at that. So you make it sound so easy, but daunting. All right.
Thanks,
Steve Hilton, thank you very much for joining us live. We all know what President Trump...
Well, there it is. Now you know why things are going like they are. And what it's going to take to do what needs to be done to change the way things are. So I hope you got the understanding. Now, let me see if I can find what I was looking for earlier and go from there. Here's the last video that I want to put on here. And this ought to tell you right up straight what the deal is. Remember, drain the swamp and how it's got to be done. All right, this is what you want to hear. The last video on the scenario right here.
This top story this hour, President Trump is set to deliver his first State of the Union address tonight. He will outline a broad agenda for the coming year, which we're told includes immigration, infrastructure, and trade. A growing number of Democratic lawmakers now say that they plan to boycott the president's State of the Union. Joining me right now to weigh in here in Washington, House Majority Leader Congressman Kevin McCarthy of California. Congressman, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Looking forward to hearing the president tonight. What can we expect? What do you think will be his priorities?
Well, of course, he'll talk about where we are with tax. I hope he asks the question that Ronald Reagan asked. Are you better off today than you were before he was a president? Because just that simple question, you look lowest unemployment, you look at everyone's 401k retirement plans, You look at the tax plan, every morning we hear something new. And more than 3 million Americans have now gotten bonuses. But my favorite story is this young salon owner. She's owned it for like a decade. She's never been able to get bonuses. She gave all 12 of her employees $500 bonuses.
Wow.
One of them used it to help pay off her hospital bill for having her 4-month-old child. One fixed the only car they had so they can go. I mean, those are real stories.
They're real stories, and the windfall continues. Just a moment ago, we reported ExxonMobil says it plans to spend $50 billion expanding in the United States over the next 5 years. It said that the investment was enhanced as a result of the tax bill. This comes as House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, however, keeps slamming the tax bill and its impact. She called the bonuses crumbs earlier this month. Listen.
The tax bill is really the dark cloud that hangs over the Capitol. They sell it as middle-class tax cut. 86 million Americans, middle-class families, will be paying more in taxes as a result of this bill. In terms of the bonus that corporate America received versus the crumbs that they are giving to workers to kind of put the schmooze on is so pathetic.
Wow, pathetic. Your reaction?
She seems so out of touch. She's such an elitist in that process. But, you know, what does she say to, as we're sitting out here, it's a little colder, but you know the people in Baltimore are going to have their electrical bills lowered because of the tax cut. They're passing that on all across the country. So not only are people getting bonuses, not only are your electrical bills going lower, but starting this month, people are getting more in their paycheck because the withholding standards are different. So I don't know where Nancy's coming from. I don't know if she thinks $1,000 is not a big deal. But I know to my constituents, it's a very big deal.
It is a very big deal. Let me ask you, you've had a phenomenal year in terms of raising money. $20 million you raised in 2017. What do you need to do to position yourself best going into the midterm elections? Obviously, the Democrats need a plan and need a message. She's just resisting. Is that going to be the case? Is that what you're expecting going into the 2018 midterms? And what can you do other than raise more money in terms of putting the party in a better light?
Well, what Nancy's hoping on is history says the party in power, meaning the party that has the White House, on average loses 29 seats in the House, and we have 24. 2 times in modern history that didn't come true. And really, she got all the Democrats to vote against the tax plan. She got all the Democrats to vote against the children's health insurance plan. They shut the government down. I don't know that the American public is going to celebrate this. When you look at unemployment lower, you look at the VA, we changed the GI Bill, was only for 15 years or you lose it. Now it's for a lifetime. I think we run on our record. And I think we'll do quite well. But you don't pass legislation just the idea for an election. You pass it to make the country better. And you see what she's trying to do. It's just kind of chaos. She wants to hold them hostage. We had a negotiation yesterday, a bicameral, bipartisan, in my office with the White House and the Secretary of Homeland to solve this DACA issue. We want to solve it once for all. And you got to give the president credit. He put a framework out there that actually went further than anybody thought he would do, that would solve the problem once and for all, and the Democrats walked back. So who really wants to solve the problem?
They will have to answer the question why they voted against the tax plan, given the impact, and they will have to answer the question about the government shutdown. But a moment ago, we had Mick Mulvaney on, and he said, look, it's no surprise that they wanted to shut down the government exactly 1 year from the president's inauguration. That was totally timed to sort of cloud the notion that the president has all these successes. And yet, the pushback is, you guys are in charge. You've got the majority in the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So what do you say to those people who say, look, the Democrats shut the government down? Donna Brazile just came on. She said, the Democrats can't shut anything down. They're not in charge.
Well, see, that's a dirty little secret, and that's not true. Because what happens in the House, it's a simple majority. So we passed the funding bill. Democrats and Nancy Pelosi worked her members to vote no. In the Senate, it takes 60 votes. We have 51 members. It always takes the Democrats to pass anything. So why are the Democrats holding up all these appointments? Why are they holding up funding for our military men and women? Why did they vote against children's health insurance when it's going to shut down in 7 states? They don't care. They wanted the president to try to look bad. They wanted to blame him. But I think the American public are smarter than that they know how the government works, that it takes 60 votes in the Senate, and they're the ones holding it up. So once it started being called the Schumer shutdown, what did he do? He shifted. And think about, what did they open the government for? The exact same policy they shut it down over, except they shortened it for 1 week.
So what are you going to do in terms of this constant resist then? I mean, you're here talking about the next big piece of legislation possibly being an infrastructure package, right? Is that accurate, by the way?
That's accurate.
Okay. So what do you do if you don't have any help on the other side, if they just keep resisting?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't help us with tax reform. They didn't want to help us with the VA. They didn't want to help us with children's health. We will just keep working because it's good for the country. Look, we got an opioid crisis. It's going clear across the country. We need to solve that. An infrastructure problem. We know where our roads are, but more importantly, what should America look like 50, 100 years from now? We want to be able to expand there as well. There are a lot of areas we still have a lot of work to do. If they don't want to help us, they want to play politics, just get out of the way and let us solve the problem.
So these next couple of months are going to be all about that. You've got some Republicans firing back. The American Action Network now spending $1 million on an ad campaign targeting Pelosi's comments. Watch this.
Congress just passed historic middle-class tax cuts, saving $2,000 for middle-class families. And Nancy Pelosi calls it
The worst bill in the history of the United States Congress.
300,000 new jobs will be created.
This tax bill is Armageddon.
With bonuses and better benefits for millions, which Pelosi calls
crumbs that they are giving to workers.
Tell Nancy Pelosi she's wrong. Middle-class tax cuts are working.
Is so pathetic.
We wonder how much this is going to resonate with voters. Obviously, she wants the majority.
Imagine if they got the majority, she'd be the speaker. So what would happen then? Think about where the market is today. Think about the bonuses. Think about the electrical bills being lowered. We are better off because of this Trump administration. I think people will see that at the end of the day. I think they're going to have to make a choice come November. Do they want to go back to the old tired ways of Nancy Pelosi? Do they want more chaos? Do they want to just hijack the government? Or they want to build a future for their children, something bigger and better?
This top story.
Yep, there you go. There's the answer. Now, who you gonna vote for? If I was you, I'd vote for Trump, and let's get the show on the road. And do what needs to be done, because your children's future is where this is going. So, you see what I'm saying? Pelosi and her bunch of gonads, or whatever you want to call them, her hooligans, they don't care about you. You ain't nothing but a vote. And as long as you don't vote for them, they won't be in office. You want to help clean the swamp, drain the swamp? That's the way to do it. Don't vote for the left and keep voting for the Republicans and stuff like that. Let's help get this nation and America back on track like it needs to be. Just picture what 10, 15, 20 years from now can be. With all the illegal immigrants out, with all the good laws in place, with all the jobs in place, with all the taxes in place, the health care in place. You know, I mean, add it up. You know, that's what I'm looking at. Of course, I probably won't be here 20, 30 years from now, but I'd be surprised if I was. But God willing and the creek don't rise, I'll do my best to be here to see it happen. But anyway, I'm going to cut this off, and you guys weigh the facts and think about what you listened to and watched and heard and all that good stuff, and just vote for who you think would be the right one to do the job. You know, it's your future, my future, your kids' future, their kids' future. You know, it's everybody in the United States. And our lives, you know, for these illegal immigrants that keep going out and doing stupid stuff, killing our loved ones, our kids, you know, our parents, and our spouses, and, you know, I mean, we got to do something. Don't sit on your hands like you don't know what's going on, because it's right here in front of you. What more do you want? You know? I'm gonna kill this and listen to what you got to say. Talk at you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.